NFL draft in Detroit. Huge night, super fun, and a lot of historical events occur, just once in a lifetime kind of stuff going down in the draft. We want to react to it all. We want to talk about it all. Just talk about very unusual. You know, in any round of the draft, in all the years of the draft, there had never been a run over 13 of a straight one side of the ball. We start off the draft with 14 straight offensive players.
Absolutely craziness, just one after the other coming off the board. I thought for sure we were going to see a Liatu Latu or a Dallas Turner come off the board before that, but you know, they just kept on going, and you know, as it rolls, people select those wide receivers, quarterbacks, because they don't want to miss out on the guy that they really have a high grade on. And when those runs are going, you want to be able to get your hand into that. And so run on quarterbacks, run on wide receivers, as well as a run on offensive tackles, all went down in those first 14 picks, which was just crazy.
Absolutely. Well, you know, it just tells us how much the league has transformed into an offensive wins championships league. And, you know, I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. I look for these kind of runs on the offensive side of the ball to become more of a rule than the exception, but created great value deep in the first round for defensive players. Some teams that I think didn't dream that they'd be able to get their hands on some defensive players, and they did. And I'll tell you what, in general, I'm just going to say this, NFC North Division, I'll tell you what, just killed it in this draft. I thought the Chicago Bears really did a nice job, but my team of the night was the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, it was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, now back to your talk about the Bears. The Bears probably have one of the best 11 personnels that they can go put out there with, as they got Caleb Williams now at quarterback with now selecting Rome Odunze, who probably pushes DJ Moore into the slot position, which is really insane, as you still have old Chargers wide receiver. I'm blanking on his name right now.
Keenan
Allen. Keenan Allen, savvy vet right there. Then you got Cole Kmet as a tight end, and you got just a lot of weapons for a young quarterback.
Swift in the backfield.
Swift in the backfield. A lot of really good talent to be able to build around that Caleb Williams selection. If they're not a playoff team this next year, I'll be very surprised, just because of how well they've been able to build this offense in an offensive-driven league. But like you said, I love the Vikings. They got J.J. McCarthy, who's been a winner in every single level he's been to. I think he's only lost basically a handful of games since high school all the way into the college game as a starting quarterback, and he continues to probably thrive in the NFL as he goes into probably the best landing situation for any quarterback going to the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I think the Bears, you know, they've got what some people would list as two of the top three prospects in the entire draft. If you go positionless, you know, they come out with two of, I think almost everybody's would probably have it, two of the top five, players, regardless of position. And so you go, yeah, this is amazing. Caleb Williams comes walking into Soldier Field, whistling into the graveyard of quarterbacks, right? Never in the history of the Chicago Bears has anyone thrown for 4,000 yards or more. If he just gets 4,001 yards, he's a legend in Chicago for the rest of his days. He'll never buy another beer in Chicago ever again after that moment. And so, yeah, you got to say that the great opportunity to get that done. There's so much talent. Hats off to the GM and the front office in really compiling a lot of talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and really setting up their rookie quarterback for success. There's a few of these rookie quarterbacks. We had 6 go in the top 12, which is 100% unprecedented. But A few of them landed in some pretty nice spots. So Caleb Williams being one. I also thought J.J. McCarthy, great landing spot for him. Great landing for the Vikings on that pick as well. They didn't have to move up huge to do so to get him. They really gave a master's class in how to do the draft the right way. So hats off to Minnesota in that. And J.J. McCarthy, I think he landed in the perfect spot for him. And then Bo Nix, the right coach for Bo Nix, in my opinion, over in Denver with Sean Payton. I think that's a match that's really nice. I don't know at the end of the day if it works out, but I think the best possible fit for Bo Nix in that selection. And I look for Bo Nix to do some nice things in that offense with Sean Payton. That is the type of quarterback. Everybody has their kind of guy, right? That type. They got a type. And Bo Nix fits that really well for Sean Payton, so I like that landing spot. The only one that I go, man, I have a hard time seeing it work out for sure is the Drake May to the Patriots. Like, it just feels ready-made for disaster. I hope not. I root for all these young players to do well and to work out, but that's ripe with danger. I mean, you're walking right into just a hairy spot there.
Yeah, you're not taking over the old Tom Brady teams. This team has slowly declined every year since Tom Brady has left, and they have less and less firepower able to support those quarterbacks. And I think Drake May's walking into a tough situation. But if you can go out there and be a good quarterback for the Patriots, you'll be beloved in Boston. But Boston is a tough crowd to play in front of week in, week out. I think Jaden Daniels, it's a toss-up on how he's going to be. As I like the fit in Washington. They got a lot of potential there, a lot of cap space that they've been working with, and so I hope to see him succeed in Washington. Then probably the most head scratcher of a pick was the selection of Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington, as he went to the Atlanta Falcons, who just paid a bunch of money to Kirk Cousins, and it was not just a lot of money, a lot of guaranteed money over the next 4 years. And then you go out and you hear that none of Kirk Cousins' camp was expecting this selection. They were expecting this pick to be the solidifier that they were going to take over that division. Tampa is a good team, but I thought Atlanta had a really good shot at being able to bulldoze the entire conference and become that number one team in that conference by selecting another really good weapon, whether that's on the defense or on the offense at the number 8 pick. But then they decided to go with Michael Penix Jr., who I personally thought was one of the quickest turnaround prospects in this year's draft, where you could go and start him in day one of the NFL. Not a guy that I necessarily thought needed to sit for a while. And so, you got him now sitting behind Kirk Cousins, just kind of confuses me. But I think Michael Penix Jr. ends up in a fantastic spot for himself, as they got a lot of weapons there to be able to support his talent.
Yeah, I'm as you know, I'm a fan of Michael Penix Jr. He's a local boy here for me in Pasco County, and so love to see him in a good landing spot. So I think great spot for him, but just a really strange way that the Falcons handled this. Yeah, the rumors that are coming out. No, conversation with Kirk Cousins or his camp. No conversations with Penix or his camp. Like, it just kind of came out of nowhere. Like, they were just like, I guess let's just throw a dart at the board and, it's Penix. All right, we'll take him. I mean, I think he's a nice player. I just don't see why. Why Kirk Cousins, then Penix?
That GM must feel untouchable, as he took a quarterback with a starting quarterback, took a running back in the top 10 last draft, took a tight end in the top 10 in the draft before that, took a wide receiver when they didn't really need a wide receiver in one of those drafts as well. It just feels like he's kind of gone wild in that Atlanta organization. And I don't agree with the pick for Atlanta, but I do think that Michael Penix Jr. will be a really good quarterback, and him taking over with Atlanta would be good. But then you got to kind of think, as Kirk Cousins, that they're probably planning to trade you away in a little bit if there's no trade clause in his contract. I haven't looked to see if that
Yeah, I don't
is,
know.
but a weird one is you've got to pay him a lot of guaranteed money. You could probably expect him at least to start the next 2 to 3 years for that Atlanta team with Michael Penix Jr. sitting behind. And Kirk Cousins has always been one of those guys that values his protection of the position. Like that's always been his case, where he always wanted that guaranteed money. He wanted to be protected within his organization, let them know that he is their guy. And now they are taking it and basically saying, well, if you mess up at any point, we got Michael Penix Jr. as the backup. And I just don't think Kirk Cousins is really the right quarterback to put that kind of pressure on.
Yeah, although he has handled pressure well. Like when he was in Washington, he played, on those contracts that were basically, 1-year contracts for, quite a few years, and bet on himself and had a lot of success. I look for him to play well. I think he's steady Eddie. He's going to play well, wherever he goes. And he's a good guy. Like he's a good guy in the locker room. So sure, he may even act kind of like that Alex Smith when Mahomes is drafted, in the locker room. I just don't know why you do it. It doesn't give me warm and fuzzies about this is how we build a team. And here's the thing, Kirk Cousins is just coming into this market. So the fans have no loyalty to Kirk Cousins. And so Kirk has a off week or two, and they're going to be, in the crowds calling for their young stud Penix to get out there on the field, and that just creates a really odd situation in the locker rooms usually. So I think Kirk Cousins, yeah, he's probably the guy that can handle it, one of the guys that can handle it the best out there, but I just don't want to do it to him. But yeah, that division looked ripe for the picking. I mean, yeah, like you said, Buccaneers, good team. I thought they made a good solid pick here in the first round with a good center. They needed to solidify that interior offensive line. They did that. And so that was a nice, just solid move for the Buccaneers. But that division, if the Falcons could have made another impact player in that first round, they really could have made a move to say, okay, this is the year of the Falcons, and we're going to make that move. And so I think blown opportunity there, but really a fun first night of the draft. I enjoyed it just as we go around. That was really the only super surprise, I think, maybe Buffalo, working its way out of the first round and not having a draft pick in the first round.
Giving it away to their rival, too. Giving it away to the Kansas City Chiefs, which was definitely an interesting one. As you want to keep that's the people you're going up against kind of year in, year out as a championship contender, and they give them a nice wide receiver. Let's just talk about that wide receiver class in general. As you had Marvin Harrison Jr. go to the Cardinals, Malik Neighbors go to New York, Rome Odunze go to the Bears. You also had, I guess we can throw in probably Brock Bowers, as he may be playing wide receiver for that Raiders team, as they just took Michael Mayer last year, one of the top tight end prospects. You also had wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. go to the Jags, wide receiver Xavier Worthy go to the Chiefs, and ending off the first round, you had Ricky Pearsall going to San Francisco out of Florida, and Xavier Legette out of South Carolina going to the Carolina Panthers, staying at home.
Yeah, a lot of wide receivers off the board. There was a lot of good depth at the wide receiver position. So not a total shock here, except for just the massive volume of receivers. I think, Raiders at that point with Brock Bowers, he just was such a good value, I think, on their board. They couldn't pass it up, but kind of an interesting fit mix there. But, Neighbors, I look at that and I go, he's going to improve the Giants. I really believe that. He's a great player. It's like throwing the deck chair off the Queen Mary. I mean, I don't know that it makes a big enough difference at this point, but no player would have made that difference. So good, solid pick. Now it's going to help out, Daniel Jones, hopefully.
it might be a good pick in that next 3 years. Once
Yeah.
you get that full entire team rounded out, and you have Jalen Hyatt as well as Malik Neighbors really rolling for that offense, and you can then implement a young quarterback into that system, and he's not taking over that same situation that Daniel Jones had to take over, where he had no wide receiver weapons to be able to develop his talents. And so I think Malik Neighbors does add a little bit of value there. We already talked about Rome Odunze. Marvin Harrison Jr., easy selection, just one
Yeah.
of the best wide receivers in the draft, going to the Cardinals. I think then you go over to the next one pick was Brian Thomas Jr., probably one of my favorite fits
Good pick.
in this draft, the big LSU body. I've always said that Trevor Lawrence loves throwing to big body, big catch radius dudes, and he's got movement skills that work really, really well. I've been saying a lot that I thought T. Higgins, they should be trying to trade for T. Higgins, and you get kind of a T. Higgins-esque player with a big body with really great movement skills. Brian Thomas Jr., I think, ends up in a really good spot with the Jaguars.
Agree with that. I think another great fit guy is Worthy with the Chiefs. I think that's going to be a really nice fit there. And you know what? The 49ers went out and got their guy. Like everyone's going, hey, they overdrafted their place, but it looks a little bit to me like it might be like the Lions. Like we watched the Lions last year in the draft and we went, they might have picked their guys a little earlier than they needed to get the guy they wanted, but they just went and said, we're just getting the guys we want. Like we're getting that guy that is the right fit. And I think that's exactly what the 49ers did with that pick. Here we go. We got a guy. And then he came into the combine. You know, everyone's kind of thinking, oh, this is like a Weddle type slot guy. And he was 6'1". He's not a little weapon, you know, like he actually is one of the better athletes in the draft. And, you know, he's going to do a nice job, I think, in that system. You know, they know their fit. Kyle Shanahan is a master of knowing the fit, and so is Lynch doing a really nice job there. And so I think even deep in this first round, like you could say, maybe it's an overdraft, maybe they drafted him too early, but it looks like the right fit. So those are a few fits that I like.
Yeah, I think Xavier Worthy is an overdraft in any other place outside of the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he
Yeah.
fits so great there. And that Ricky Pearsall was actually probably one of my favorite wide receivers in that second grouping. Once you fall out of the top three, he's just a guy that has really great movement skills, do it all. He's one of those guys that's a football player. He can go return punts for you. He can go do a lot of different things for you on the football field. Has probably one of the best adjustments to football, like while it's in the air, he adjusts to the football at the peak of any of these wide receivers. And so I really like him. I think one of the guys that I think, you know, I don't like saying that guys aren't going to work out, but Xavier Legette going to Carolina did
Oh,
not feel
yeah.
like the right pick for me. I think he's a really good player. He's a big body, lots of potential there, but he never really had that giant breakout season for South Carolina that you hope to see out of those big body wide receivers. And with the talent that was still there in the wide receiver room, I thought Legette was a little bit of an overdraft, and I wouldn't have selected him right there. But he is a Carolina guy staying in Carolina. I think
Yeah.
that's, you know, plays a little bit of value right there. As you know, the fans are going to love that Legette stays there in to play for the Panthers. But I just don't necessarily love the fit wise, as I think they needed maybe a more consistent weapon that I can really trust hands wise.
Super deep wide receiver draft. There's still guys on the board that are going to come off here in the second and third round at the wide receiver position that are probably going to be super productive NFL players. So it's been a fun
really
wide
good for
receiver
the
draft here.
Chargers.
What's that?
Really good for the Chargers. As the Chargers skipped out on taking the offensive weapon, they decided to go with Joe Alt at offensive
Yeah.
tackle, which I think is a great fit for that new Harbaugh system. That they're
Yes.
bringing in a versatile lineman that can play guard, can play tackle, can be moved all over wherever he fits best. And then they have one of the earlier picks in this second round, and they're going to be able to take one of these really, really talented wide receivers that are still available. If they end up with a Keon Coleman at in that second round, that's a really big win for them as they get that jump ball guy to be able to go get after it for Justin Herbert.
You think you can Harbaugh pull the trigger on an ex-Sparty in that round too, or does he go with one of his U of M wide receivers at that position? I think probably would go Coleman if he's sitting there. But yeah, it's a nice opportunity for the Chargers. I'm interested to see as the Chargers draft progresses, just fitting into this new Harbaugh world that they're in, and just how they surround, their already stars with talent. I think, yeah, like you said, that's a great fit for Harbaugh to go offensive line, in his first pick. He goes, okay, they're on brand. I always like it when I see teams are drafting with the brand of who they are. And I saw quite a few teams doing that. I felt like there was less surprises in this first round than we've seen in years past. Really, just the Atlanta Falcons. Other than that, I didn't see any true head scratchers. But man, did we get some great value on the defensive side of the ball late. Again, we talked about Vikings with a great draft earlier. Them to be able to pick up Dallas Turner with that second pick, I mean, stud move right there. They were able to get a dude.
Yeah, maybe the best edge rusher in the draft, dropping all the way to 17th. You rarely ever see that. And he's going to go to a defense that uses that kind of skilled edge very often, with Brian Flores loving to move around guys, blitz them from different angles. I think Dallas Turner was probably the best fit for that system, as Dallas Turner is an ultimate athlete. He just is a guy that can be used in multiple different ways, and I think he fits great with Brian Flores, and I think that's just a match made in heaven between two guys. I think a guy who I'm not 100% sure, kind of head scratcher for me, was the Chop Robinson to Miami selection. I thought Chop Robinson is a project pick, and after both their DNs had season-ending injuries, I thought you would want to select a guy that was a little bit more ready-made to go out there and be an edge rusher right off the bat, where I think Chop Robinson needs some time to be able to develop all that athletic potential that he has there.
Another interesting edge pick to watch is Verse to the Rams. He's got that really nice, bull rush, kind of a power rush guy. Can he pull off that at the NFL level? Is he going to have to probably gain some other skill sets in his pass rush? But I like him coming from, small college to Florida State last year, had a great season, but he's an older guy, right? He's been in the college game for a while, and so he's pushing around guys that are maybe 2 years younger than him, and not going to happen in the NFL game. But the Rams got their guy. They were high on him the whole time, and they were able to see him fall to them. So, but a guy that's a little bit like you were talking about, a project at that edge position.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, because they like to move their guys all over the place. Like, they're going to put a 310-pound guy out on edge in Los Angeles, and I wonder, because they might ask him to do some outside linebacker stuff, and we saw him not thrive nearly as much when he got put at outside linebacker for Florida State. But when he's at the hand in the dirt edge, he is a very productive guy. We may see him move to the inside a little bit more. He might be a guy who goes to D tackle on pass downs, and then goes out onto the edge on run downs. He could be a kind of multi-versatile guy in that way. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Very great athlete, so he can definitely develop those skills for sure. I think other players, Liatu Latu going over to the Colts, I think is an interesting selection. He's just such a finished product. As long as you're not worried about the injury history, he's just a guy that has every move in the book, has amazing bend off the edge. He's going to be a perennial, really, really talented edge rusher for that Colts team for a long time.
Absolutely. And then going to DB, some cornerbacks really fall late into the draft. I don't think that the Eagles ever thought that was going to happen, that they were going to get their hands on Mitchell. And I don't think the Lions saw, they moved up a little bit to get him, but I don't think that they saw that happening either. So some nice cornerbacks drop, but we still haven't seen, safety number one come off the board. We haven't seen running back number one come off the board yet. And so this is going to be interesting even as we move into the second and third rounds, some good values out there.
Absolutely. Cornerbacks might have been my favorite fits in this entire draft. Quinyon Mitchell, best zone cornerback in the draft, going to a place where they've thrived with a good zone cornerback in Darius Slay, big play Slay. I think that's going to be a great spot for him to go. Terrion Mitchell, they love to run man on those corners in Detroit, and Terrion Arnold is a man-to-man specialist coming out of Alabama. And then you got Nate Wiggins going to the Baltimore Ravens. He's going to be that cornerback number 2 for the Ravens. I think another great fit on those cornerbacks. I really enjoyed how the cornerbacks landed in this one. And you still have some very talented cornerbacks with Kool-Aid McKinstry still available, as well as your Iowa cornerback. That's cornerback safety mix. Blanking on his name.
Yeah, I'm blanking on it as well as we're talking here, but yeah, super fun. How it fell in round 1, super fun
Cooper
draft.
DeJean.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cooper DeJean is the quarterback.
Yeah.
Just wanted to look it up real quick.
Yeah. No, that's going to be fun to see where he ends up. And I think, super fun first round of the draft. And it leaves open for some fun picks in round 2 and 3 here as well. Good fits for a lot of these teams. You're not going to necessarily give them an A+ grade on it, but just good, solid picks that, that just fit teams, ethos and all those kind of things. And then some really outstanding ones. I think NFC North just keeps getting stronger. I didn't mention the Packers, but they got a nice O-lineman in that first round, and they seem to turn offensive linemen into gold all the time. So, I'm always happy to see the Packers go O-line. They just love that. But, so any last thoughts here on the first roundy?
Oh, I mean, probably we didn't talk about it, but Alofu Shanu going over to the Jets, learning behind the 2 great offensive tackles that they got over there. I think he is going to really thrive going over to the Jets, and I think Aaron Rodgers is, praising that front office because he gets another guy who has amazing movement skills that can protect him.
Yeah, well, they needed that bad. I mean, there was some really bad linemen or lines that got some help in the first round of the draft, and we're gonna see where this all goes. But round 2 coming up tonight. Well, thank you for watching and listening to Ruggles Roundup on the Elevated Mission podcast. Make sure if you're on YouTube, you click the subscribe and you click the like button. We love that you're out there listening and watching us talk about all things sports. We'll see you next time.